Hello, it's Miss O, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about different pieces of punctuation and how to properly use them. So let's start with some of the more basic pieces first, the period, the question mark, and the exclamation point. Most of this stuff will probably be review for you. So periods, most people know how to use those already. They end sentences. They also come after initials. They come after some abbreviations, and they also function as a decimal point in money. And you can see my examples there. I like cheeseburgers with a period at the end, Marvin K. Brown with a period after the initial K, and $4.89 with a decimal point between the dollar amount and the cents. Question marks and interrogative sentences. So any sentence that asks a question is going to be ended with a question mark. So examples that I have here are what time is it and dude, where's my car? Exclamation points and exclamatory sentences and interjections. So the first example that I have here is an example of an exclamatory sentence. And if any of these different sentence types are not ringing a bell for you, I have another video on this channel that explains all of them very clearly. But the first example here at the bottom of the slide says, "It's great to see you," with an exclamation point there. Exclamatory sentences show strong feeling or emotion. So we can assume that the emotion in this sentence is one of excitement or happiness or joy. And then I have some examples of interjections there too, which are kind of special kinds of sentences. They are one word and they have an exclamation point at the end, but they also show emotion and strong feeling as well. So the two examples I have here are ouch and wow. Other examples would be whoa, or no way, or things like that. Okay, the apostrophe. Apostrophes have two primary functions, and it's really amazing to see how much people try to make the apostrophe do more than what it's supposed to. So apostrophes show possession and they show contraction. Example, I went to Melissa's house after the concert. We have an apostrophe and an S at the end of Melissa to show that she is owning her house in this sentence. And we didn't want to visit Mark. So here in the second example, I have a contraction with didn't. That is a shortened version of the word combination did not. When writing a quotation within a quotation, apostrophes can also serve as single quotation marks. So if you have a sentence where you are quoting someone and within that quote somebody else is quoting someone else, you can denote the second quote with apostrophe marks to look like single quotation marks. Example here, Denise explained, Dean Marks stated in his instructions that the attendance policy would be changing only after approval from our campus director. So the very last part of that sentence is something that was said by Dean Marks. The entire piece up to where the quotation marks start, that was explained by Denise. So that's kind of a quote within a quote. So when I was mentioning that people try to make the apostrophe do more than what it's supposed to, a lot of times people assume that the apostrophe helps to make things plural, but it actually doesn't. They don't make anything plural at all. Now, when it comes to showing ownership for nouns that are plural and they end with S, then you just add an apostrophe to the outside. So the first example here explains that perfectly. My cat's bowl is empty. Here we have more than one cat, and so they're all sharing this bowl, and to denote ownership of the bowl between all of the cats, we just put an apostrophe on the outside of cats. Also, Adam borrowed his parents' car while his was in the shop. So again, Adam has more than one parent. They own this car, and so we're just going to put an apostrophe on the outside of parents. Since we've already made it plural by adding an S. To add ownership, we just put the apostrophe on the outside. Now, some nouns are made plural without adding an S. And if you want to show ownership or possession for nouns that are like that, then you can add an apostrophe and an S to show possession there. So example, we visited the children's pool in La Jolla, and the women's auxiliary hosted a banquet last night. The semicolon and the colon. Semicolons join two complete sentences that are closely related. So if you have two sentences that are both complete, they're closely related, you can choose to separate them with a semicolon rather than separating them with a period. Example, we went to the beach yesterday, semicolon, the water was warm, period. So it's a perfect way to use the semicolon there because those two sentences are closely related. They're also both complete. Also note, after the semicolon, the first letter of the first word actually doesn't get capitalized there. Unless it is a proper noun of some sort, like someone's name or a specific place, you don't actually capitalize that first letter of the first word there. Semicolons also separate items in a series that contain independent qualities or adjectives. And so the example that I have here actually lists city and state, and this is something that always gets separated by a comma. But to make things kind of clean and delineate them nicely, after each city and state gets listed, we put a semicolon in between. So example, my sales tour included stops in Charlotte, North Carolina, Phoenix, Arizona, Dallas, Texas, and St. Paul, Minnesota. Colons are used for opening salutations in letters, and this is mostly in business, although sometimes in personal writing and emails and stuff, people will use that for the opening salutation. They also provide emphasis, and they introduce an example or a series. So I've been using them above in all of these different slides. Whenever I have my examples, I'll usually put EX, and then I'll put a colon, and that'll point you to what my example is for that section. Some other ways that you can use them is to whom it may concern. So this is kind of like that business letter example I was mentioning. Also, I went to the store to pick up, colon, ice cream, cake, cookies, sodas, and frosting. Yummy. And then the last example, they had only one thing left to do, colon, pack. So this kind of gives emphasis to the fact that this is the very last thing that they had to do. I want to make sure that I point out that semicolons and colons are not interchangeable, so I think sometimes people get confused about which one functions as what. And so they'll have the colon stand in a place where a semicolon should be and vice versa, but they're definitely not interchangeable. The only thing that should appear when you're using a colon, appear after the colon, that is whatever it is that you're emphasizing, whatever example you're trying to point to, whatever series or list it is that you are going to include. That's the only thing that should appear to the right of the colon when you use it. So the examples I have here, I received multiple citations, colon, speeding, failure to stop, a broken tail light, and expired registration. So that's the right way to use a colon. In the second example, our favorite spot in Carlsbad was, colon, Tamarack Beach. This is an incorrect usage of the colon because you can actually take the colon off of there and the sentence would be fine. Another example is, I bought, colon, eggs, bread, milk, and juice at the store. This one is incorrect as well because not only can we take the colon out and the sentence is completely fine without it, but also what appears to the right of the colon in this example is not just the list of things that I bought, but we also have the prepositional phrase at the store, which would be an incorrect usage of the colon. Okay, the dash and the ellipsis. The dash can be used to offset information that's meant to be an aside, almost kind of like parentheses do sometimes. Or it can be used to offset information that isn't essential to the sentence, in which case you would be using two dashes in tandem there to offset what it is that's not essential. It also shows a break in a sentence. This is most often seen in dialogue, but it usually signifies some sort of an interruption has happened. So the first example, my car, which will be paid off next month, has a rebuilt engine and custom interior. So I'm using the dashes there to offset information about my car that's not essential to the sentence. I can pull it out of the sentence and the sentence's meaning will not change. Second example, it's really hard for me to study at my house because there are too many and then I have a dash and I sort of trail off there. That is signifying kind of an interruption in what it is that I was saying, and that's a perfect use of the dash. The ellipsis, or the dot dot dot, is also used to show a break in a sentence, but this one is more similar to like if you were trailing off. And using the ellipsis in your writing can also show the passage of time. And this is usually when you end a paragraph, you have a couple of spaces, you have an ellipsis or your dot, 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 and then you have a couple more spaces, and then you start your next paragraph. Usually that signifies that some kind of time has passed. But the example that I have here, I went to the market, but I didn't see any apples, dot, dot, dot. I saw lots of tomatoes, though, so, that's sort of a trailing off there in the middle of that sentence. Kind of denotes a pause, too. A longer pause than a comma would give you.